Chapter 203 to 204. Really? No rest for the wicked. Ray sighed as he recounted the past few days in his head. He and Tsunade came home 3 days ago. Tsunade instantly went into his dimension to cuddle with Blondie in order to replenish her essential dose of fluff, as she called it. Ray also decided to check up on Black, finding out the foxes were already the size of a horse. That was quite a nice growth spur, considering they were born only recently. What was not nice was Pakura coming to his dimension and telling him there was an emergency. Really, he was home not even for 10 minutes, and there was already some screw for him to fix. Fast forward to the current time, and grumbling, Ray stood on a hill located in the land of water. Inconsiderate prick. Couldn't Yagura start with his genocidal urges a week later? 3 freaking days of paperwork, diplomacy, and preparations. Sigh, I really need a proper vacation. Ray lamented, only to get a blank gaze from Ringo, who stood to his left, and an amused giggle from May, who was on his right side. You just came from a vacation. Ringo deadpanned, crossing her hands under her chest. That was not a vacation. That was a business trip. No matter if I spent most of it relaxing with Tsunade, official documents state it was not a vacation. Therefore, it was not a vacation. He defended, causing Ringo to sigh. Ma, forget the workaholic. She would not understand what is the use of free time, even if you spelled it to her. Honestly, she would never leave her forge, if not for the fact she is your wife. May decided to donate her 2 cents to the conversation. What's that supposed to mean? Ringo asked crossly. Don't give me that look. You only leave your workshop to eat with us when you have scheduled training or sparring, and for sex with Ray. Even now, you are mostly jealous. You had no alone time with Ray before we had to come here. May snorted. At least I wasn't the one keeping half of the house awake yesterday. How dumb must you be to forgot the silencing seals? Ringo sarcastically quipped. Hey, I resent that, you know. May started, but Ray's hands suddenly grasped the shoulder of both Ringo and May, stopping their tirade. He didn't even need to say a word for the girls to understand the meaning of his gesture. The arguments between Ringo and May never ceased. And while everybody knew they didn't put much heart into them, Ray really didn't feel like listening to the 2 bickering women right now. They are almost here, he said, causing both May and Ringo to straighten up and enter their professional facade. It took a few minutes, but right on the decided time, 3 mist ninjas landed in front of Ray and girls, led by Ao, the leader of the resistance, himself. Because of the fact that the 3rd Mizukage delayed Obito from influencing Yagura, the clans had more time to prepare. Thanks to Ray, who warned them what was most probably the plan of Obito, and that he would most likely succeed given enough time. Many clans took the threat seriously. Frankly, if Ray was just some unknown chump, nobody would care what he was rambling about. But since he was a famous SS rank ninja, his word was akin to gospel to them. Really, Ray couldn't help but find it incredibly amusing. Because of the warning, the 2nd, the 3rd Mizukage was assassinated. The red lights started blaring in the heads of the clan heads. When Yagura finally started pulling anti-clan reforms out of his arse, the clans were prepared the best they could. Hence, the resistance was much stronger this time around. That, however, didn't mean they could just storm Kirigagor and win. Not without heavy casualties, at least. Even with the bolstered numbers and many clans intact, the resistance was still outnumbered 1 to 20, which is why Ray was currently in the land of water, despite dearly wishing to be able to laze around in his bed right at the moment. They wanted help, and Ray, Ringo, and May were the poor sods who drew the shortest straws. so they had to listen to their demands and possibly negotiate an agreement with them. I am never again playing a drawing game to decide who would deal with something like this. Ray inwardly grumbled. Even my luck is clearly against me. Greetings, Redona. Please, follow us. Our hideout is nearby. Ao said in a nonsense tone and turned around before starting to run. May, Ringo, and Ray looked at each other before helplessly shrugging and following. So, why exactly did they choose you as the leader? Ringo asked after a few minutes of silent running. She knew Ao, and it was obvious the man nor his guards were not content with seeing her. For them, she was most likely a traitor. Not that Ray cared, since he called as such too. The clans bickered who should lead, and in the end, it was decided the leader was to be someone not under the influence of a particular clan. Ao unhappily grunted, showing just how much he loved his current position. I was just the most skilled guy out of those who joined the resistance and didn't belong to a clan. Sucks to be you. May snickered, causing even the Owl's guards to join her briefly, before they earned themselves a one-eyed glare from their boss. That shut them up good. I agree, Ao muttered, and the group again fell into silence. Ray didn't ask his questions in favor of observation. He knew Ringo only started the brief debate in order to give Ray a better picture of Ao, as if she really cared who or why led the resistance. Her questioning, however, gave Ray a better perspective of what to expect. So the clans are not as united as they would like to portray. Hey, well, naturally, they survived with more members than in canon. They were always somewhat entitled, and now that nobody humbled them by culling out most of their populace, the clans would naturally bicker who was the biggest fish in the pond. Must be really annoying. No wonder they seek outside help, then. Ray mentally summed up AU's situation. Ray wasn't really happy with what he heard so far. The resistance was outnumbered, and the members had a hard time working together. They actually had to give the leadership to a third party to keep a semblance of order in their ranks. Many Kirigokura high-ranking ninjas were members of some clan, meaning, despite being outnumbered, the resistance should, at the very least hypothetically, be able to win against Kirigokura, especially if they employed guerrilla warfare, which is incredibly suitable for the mist ninjas. They could weaken the Kiri forces enough that the chances of winning a head-on assault would be greatly in their favor. And yet, they wanted to pull Yozora into it. Somehow, I am starting to have a really bad feeling that they expect some hocus-pocus out of me that would resolve their current problem without any country-crippling bloodshed. Ray started to realize what exactly the Kiri clans wanted. This was not a desperate fight for survival for them. Not yet. They weren't reduced to a few members. Not in this timeline. Ray actually cursed when he realized a snag in his plan. This was something he overlooked. The clans simply wanted to return to their comfortable position of power in Kiri. This meant Yogura had to be removed without much infighting that would weaken Kirigokura, and cause the clans having to work overtime to keep their village safe afterward. They simply wanted a fairy tale outcome with a happily ever after. Oh well, no matter how ridiculous this is becoming, it's not like this situation doesn't play right into my cards. Ray mentally shrugged. He would have to adjust his plans, but maybe the current situation would be even more beneficial for him. Ray discreetly looked at Ringo with the corner of his eyes. The question is, how pissed will she be when I enact my so evil plan? After arriving at the hideout of the resistance, Ray, Ringo, and May marveled at the place. All of them spent years in the service of Kirigaka, and yet neither knew about the place. From the exquisite buildings and the crests on them, it was obvious the village in front of their eyes belonged to a clan which only made their lack of knowledge about it even more impressive. Kirigoktia loved to keep track of any place the clans owned, after all. Rei couldn't help but smirk. It was obvious that some clans didn't trust Kirigoktia enough to abandon their previous compounds, or reveal their whereabouts upon the establishment of the village. The entire place was quite spacious, but it was also masterfully hidden by the local nature. And according to Rei's senses, some quite rudimentary but nevertheless quite effective Fuinjutsu. Just wow. Kirigokyo could run in circles around this place for months, considering the serious lack of Fuinjutsu experts. The seals perfectly blend with the local nature and cover the village. Quite ingenious, to be honest. Although, it wouldn't work if the clan village was bigger. Rei Riley thought about how useless these seals would be for him if he tried to hide his own village with them. His mind quickly stopped this contemplation as he noticed that to his right, Mei was walking with a small welcoming smile, while secretly but constantly letting out a bit of her chakra seep into the air around her. Already taking preventive measures, Rei noted. He was especially proud that he managed to discover Mei's subtle use of her steam bloodline, only thanks to his senjutsu-enhanced senses. This meant that even Ao, who already sported his stylish eye patch, and no doubt monitored them non-stop with his Byakugan, would not get even an inkling of Mei's usage of the chakra, because to him, it would simply seem like a natural leakage of chakra into the surroundings that every person, even civilians, had. Mei simply leaked quite a bit more, which could be chalked up to her massive chakra reserves. And there laid the reason why Rei was so proud. It didn't seem as if Mei was using a technique, not even to Byakugan. And yet, slowly but surely, the air was starting to get thinly saturated with her chakra, drifting away from Ao to different parts of the village so he doesn't get suspicious. It was not as if Mei needed a lot of her chakra in the air in order to do nasty stuff with it either. Rei's eyes discreetly glanced at Ringo, who instantly noticed and her grip on the handles of the swords on her waist slightly tightened, notifying Rei she was ready to act upon being ordered. Her eyes were set in a cold facade, and Rei knew if he told her to slaughter every single person in the village, she would do so. It was reassuring and yet a bit disturbing. But that was Ringo. After she decided to throw everything away for Rei, her determination only strengthened. Through the years, and not one of his girls showed such unquestioning loyalty to him as her. Yes, his wives were loyal without a shadow of a doubt, but Ringo was in the league of its own, clutching onto Rei after forsaking Kirigokya for him. Rei simply widened his smile, giving Ringo a signal that no carnage would be happening right about now, which elicited a small, almost pouty frown from the redhead, while her grip slightly slackened. Obviously, the Jonins escorting them through the clan village noticed her slight tensing, and it created a quite stifling atmosphere which only somewhat eased up after Ringo became more relaxed. Nevertheless, they had no idea what exactly caused the famous assassin in front of them to get battle ready, and that, even if they didn't outwardly show it, drove many of them scared shitless. Rei chuckled at the mirth in Ringo's eyes. The minx clearly did it on purpose, giving the ninjas round a warning. And if the small widening of the distance between Ringo and the ninjas who escorted them was any indication, it worked spectacularly. Needless to say, Rei had no illusion that Ringo was simply playing around. She was clearly mapping out the village, remembering any escape route, any important place that could help in a fight. Simply, her deeply ingrained, cold, calculative instincts of an assassin was in full throttle, devising plan after plan while analyzing the situation and the best way to terminate everybody around. Rei, on the other hand, was also busy with using his chakra to form seals under the soles of his boots as he walked. causing them to sink into the earth. It was quite an advanced technique, and getting it to work with his feet rather than hands took a long time, but this way, he could simply walk and distribute his seals on the places he set his feet on without being noticed. From a perspective of a normal ninja, it would be completely mind-boggling that the trio managed to do what they were doing without being noticed. Despite being surrounded by a Byakugan user and a village full of ninjas, they finally reached their destination, a well-decorated mansion in the middle of the village. The mansion was the grandest building around, and Ray had no doubt the clan heads of clans that formed the resistance would be just waiting to manipulate him to help them. Such was the disadvantage of working more with the third Mizukage, and never teaming up with other ninjas from Kirigakure Shore. The clan heads most likely saw him as a powerful individual, but they were people who had power and influence for most of their lives. Ray was really curious just how many of them would take him seriously in this little political game of theirs, considering the inactivity of Yosira in recent years. This will be a monumental drag, won't it? Ray wearily sighed as he stared unimpressed at the lavish mansion in front of them. The group entered, and right as they passed the door, Ao turned towards Ray and started talking in an emotionless tone. "I will require you to leave your weapons here. They will be returned after the negotiation. Standard procedure. I hope you don't mind." He swept the trio with his eyes, showing a bit disgruntled expression when he saw Ringo shrug and hand her swords to the ninja/receptionist/guard/whatever else required. Ringo simply smirked at Ao, causing his eyes to narrow as a weary sigh left his lips. He knew out of the three ninjas before him, Ringo was the most dependent on her weapons, and yet she was completely fine with handing her swords over. The Ringo he remembered would lash out and bring hell to the mortal plane if anybody demanded her to give her swords away. Ao correctly assumed that what he was seeing was a whole load of trouble as his head started to hurt with a profound headache, while Ray only amusedly handed over his kunai pouch to the receptionist. Ringo's swords were still the same two chakra blades he gifted her when Kiba was taken away from her. There was only one thing dearer to her in the world than these blades, and that was Ray himself. Even Tsunade, Ringo's most favorite person out of Ray's wives, didn't reach the same level as the two blades. But Ray also knew that since she started focusing on her blacksmithing, Ringo made sure to improve the blades immensely. By now, she can summon them with but a thought in a span of a split of a second from literally anywhere in the world. It would take a quite strong seal to prevent her to get her swords. Ray inwardly snorted, knowing Ringo had no problem with handing out her swords, only because she could resummon them anytime she desired. Noticing that May didn't move to remove any weapons from her person, the guard spoke. "Lady Terumi, could you please hand over your weapons?" Ray noted how polite they were, but he guessed that was given, considering she was the first SS rank to come from their village, ever. May simply grinned and shrugged. "I have no weapons on my person." She turned to look straight at Ao, getting his full, undivided attention. "My chakra is all I need." The guards didn't know what to do in a situation like this. May was an SS rank Kunoichi, and offending her would be quite ahem. They simply turned towards Ao and waited for orders. By that point, Ao's headache increased. For a second, he had a bad feeling he missed something, but in the end, he just nodded at a guard to search May. Seeing how stiffly the guard approached her, May chuckled. "Get it over with, but make sure your hands don't wander where they don't belong." This, she gestured at her body, belonged solely to Ray, and narrowed her eyes at the poor sod chosen to search her. A few very, very uncomfortable moments later for the almost crying guard. The trio was amused beyond belief, while Ao was now actively rubbing his temples. when he saw how the guard whimpered every time his hands approached May's breasts or lower body, causing her to tense up in warning. "She is clear," the guard said, and Ray would even find his even tone impressive, if the man didn't have such a fearful expression on his face. Frankly, Ray found the entire situation exceedingly amusing, especially since May threw Ao such an obvious clue. "Chakra is all I need, seriously." She couldn't have given him a bigger hint to what she was doing during their walk towards the mansion. Ray giddily thought, "I really start to see why Itachi and Kisame would stop for a snack in a dango shop in the middle of Konoha." Despite both being very notorious rogue ninjas, and Itachi being one of the most wanted men from Konoha, it's simply so fun to be surrounded by ninjas, especially elite jonins, the so-called cream of the crop, and seeing them utterly clueless when you do something. Ao having a Byakugan is just a cherry on the top. May even hinted that she did something right into O's face, and the man, the former best hunter ninja of Kirigakure, simply couldn't figure it out. Then again, if jonins could figure our tricks out, maybe we don't deserve the title of SS rank, Ray conceded in his mind. "Well, if everything is in order, I think it is time to meet the big bad boys," Ray quipped, getting an annoyed grunt from Ao, who still couldn't shake off the feeling he missed something. He was not a happy camper right about now.